What would you do if the wealth you built could buy your child everything? Yet one night, you discovered that the one thing they truly wanted was something your money could never give. This is the story of a millionaire father who came home earlier than expected, and what he saw his little girl doing that night shattered his heart and made him cry. Stay with me until the end, because this story will touch your soul. And before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that can change lives. Richard Donovan was the kind of man the city whispered about with both awe and envy. At 42, he had built an empire of hotels, investments, and properties spread across the country. People admired his success, his sharp suits, his expensive cars, and the way he commanded any room he walked into. To the world, he was the perfect example of a self-made millionaire who had everything. But behind the golden image, Richard was just a father trying to balance the chaos of his business empire with the quiet needs of his little girl. His daughter Emily was only 9 years old, bright, curious, and soft-hearted. She had long chestnut hair and eyes that sparkled with innocence, though lately, Richard felt like he was missing the sparkle more often than not. His meetings, business trips, and late-night deals always seemed to take priority over bedtime stories, school recitals, and weekend picnics. He always told himself he was doing it all for her, that every long hour he spent in the office, every missed dinner was an investment in Emily's future. He believed money would secure her happiness. On that particular Wednesday evening, Richard had planned to work until midnight. He had an important dinner with investors lined up, followed by hours of reviewing documents. But for some reason, perhaps fate or maybe exhaustion from the endless cycle of work, he canceled the dinner early and told his driver to take him home. It was only 7:30 p.m. when his luxury car pulled up in front of his sprawling mansion on the hill. Normally, the house would be buzzing with staff, but Richard had sent most of them away early for the evening. As he stepped inside, the halls were unusually quiet. The silence was comforting at first until he heard a faint sound echoing from upstairs. It wasn't the hum of a television or the shuffle of footsteps, it was the soft, broken sound of a little girl's voice. Richard froze, his polished shoes silent against the marble floor as he tilted his head to listen. The voice was Emily's. She wasn't singing, she wasn't laughing. She was whispering words that carried a weight no child should ever carry. Slowly, Richard climbed the stairs, each step heavy with a mixture of dread and curiosity. He followed the sound down the hallway to Emily's room. The door was slightly ajar, and when he peered through the crack, the sight before him shattered his carefully built world. Emily was sitting on the floor beside her bed, hugging one of his old business jackets tightly to her chest like it was a stuffed animal. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered into the fabric, "I just wish you were home more, Daddy. I just want you here. I don't need the toys or the big house, I just need you." Richard felt his throat tighten as if invisible hands were choking him. He stood there, rooted to the spot, listening to the raw confession of his little girl. She didn't know he was there. She thought she was alone in her sadness, pouring her heart out to a jacket that smelled faintly of him. In that moment, Richard's entire definition of success crumbled. The expensive dolls he had bought her, the endless gadgets, the vacations with nannies, all of it meant nothing. His daughter was starving for his love, for his time, for something that no amount of money could replace. He wanted to burst into the room, scoop her into his arms, and promise never to leave her side again. But instead, he stood frozen, tears welling up in his own eyes. For years, Richard had prided himself on being unshakable, on never letting emotions interfere with business. But as he watched his daughter sob alone, hugging his jacket like it was her only friend, he felt weaker than he ever had in boardrooms or hostile negotiations. He quietly stepped back from the door, afraid of scaring her, and retreated down the hall to gather himself. His mind was a storm, guilt, regret, and sorrow colliding inside him. He realized he had become a stranger in his own daughter's life. Richard went to his study, closed the door, and sat at his desk with his head in his hands. The mahogany walls lined with awards and certificates suddenly looked hollow. The titles, Businessman of the Year, Visionary Entrepreneur, mocked him. What was the point of all this if he couldn't even be the father his daughter needed? He thought of his late wife Sarah, who had passed away when Emily was just 3. She used to remind him constantly, "Don't let money take you away from us, Rich. Emily needs her father more than she'll ever need fortune." At the time, he had nodded but secretly believed Sarah didn't understand the importance of financial security. Now, sitting in that office, Richard realized she had been right all along. The memory of Sarah's words and the image of Emily crying burned together in his chest until he couldn't hold it in anymore. He broke down, his shoulders shaking as tears poured freely. Richard Donovan, the man known for conquering markets and crushing competition, was crying alone in his study, not because of business failures but because of the discovery that his greatest treasure had been neglected. He decided then and there that something had to change. But how? Could he mend the gap years of absence had created? Would Emily forgive him? After a few minutes, he wiped his eyes and stood up. With trembling hands, he reached for his phone and canceled the meetings scheduled for the rest of the week. The assistant on the other end was shocked. Mr. Donovan never canceled, but Richard didn't care anymore. He no longer wanted to be defined by the empire he built. He wanted to be defined by the love he could give his daughter. Slowly he walked back upstairs, his heart pounding with both fear and determination. As he neared Emily's room, he saw that the light was still on. He gently pushed the door open this time, and Emily quickly wiped her eyes, startled by his presence. "Daddy," she said, her voice small and uncertain. Richard knelt down beside her, his arms open, his own tears glistening. "I'm sorry, princess," he whispered, pulling her close. Emily buried her face in his chest, and for the first time in a long while he felt the warmth of her tiny arms around him. He didn't have the right words yet, but he knew one thing: this was the moment his life truly changed. From that night onward, Richard's life changed completely. He woke up the next morning not thinking about markets or contracts, but about how to make Emily smile. Instead of rushing out the door in a suit, he cooked her breakfast, clumsily flipping pancakes while she giggled at his mess. For the first time in years, the mansion felt alive with laughter instead of silence. He began taking her to school himself, asking about her dreams, her favorite stories, her drawings. Emily's shy eyes slowly brightened, and the walls between them began to crumble. Richard even stepped away from several business ventures, appointing others to run them so he could be present at every recital, every parent-teacher meeting, every small moment that truly mattered. Yet, what touched him most was not the grand gestures, but the little things: Emily holding his hand while they walked in the garden, or whispering at night, "I'm happy you're here, Daddy." One evening, as she drifted to sleep in his arms, Richard realized he hadn't just come home early that one night, he had truly come home to his daughter's heart. And before we end, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us what truly matters in life.